Hey everyone, what a great question being posed in this headline from an article out of the Financial Post. Why do we have high youth unemployment concurrent with a national labor shortage? Job vacancies are on the rise in agriculture, transportation, manufacturing, and in jobs such as plumbing, mechanics, and electricians. It's time high schools started teaching and promoting their value, CFIB. And let me tell you, as someone out there in those blue-collar fields, in the construction trades, and in transportation, well, I used to be until big government destroyed that career. Anyways, moving on from that. But as someone, like I say, who's been in the construction trades for many years, I've seen it out there personally with real-world experience. There is a huge shortage of even just people that are willing to do general labor activities or duties that actually don't require a whole lot of official training other than what you're told by your supervisor, foreman, or head of your crew. Usually these jobs don't require a whole lot of intellect, but they do require some manual work, some real physical work that is definitely demanding but also rewarding. Because that's the thing, what I don't understand about people that seem to have a problem with physical labor is, do you not realize your body probably reflects the fact that you don't like physical labor? Yes, those of us that do physical labor, yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, we sweat, we toil, we bleed. But we also end up being in much better physical condition as a result, as a consequence of doing real hard work. So that's actually a benefit for us, not just for our physical appeal, but for our long-term health as well. You might want to keep that stuff in mind, all you people out there, or especially you young millennials that seem to be scared to death of doing any real physical work. The other flip side of that too, I'll point out, is people, especially younger people, even when I was younger, they go to the gym and pay to go to a gym so they can do exercise. Meanwhile, I'm getting paid as a consequence of my duties in the jobs that I perform to actually do that kind of workout. So you're paying for your workout. I'm getting paid to get my workout. When I was driving truck, sitting there holding the wheel, not a whole lot of physical activity involved there. So I would supplement it with physical activities in my leisure time, in my time at home. But once again, I didn't pay for it. I didn't go to a gym. I paid for a few pieces of workout equipment and some barbells and some dumbbells, but that was it. And those continued to pay off long after I purchased them. And they still do to this day. Anyways, back to the article. Actually, before I delve into the article, let me just say one of the main reasons, one of the main contributing factors why you're not seeing the young people step up the plate in these particular fields is how are they going to pay to sustain themselves when the rate of pay that's offered in most of the provinces in this country, I mean, other than out in Alberta, but even there you're seeing the wages going way down in comparison to just a few years ago. But how are these young people wanting to be enticed to step up the plate when the wages that they're seeing out there are pretty lackluster and minimal, especially when compared to the minimum wage? So let me just say, for a typical general laborer out there, your entry point starting wage is going to be roughly around $14 to $16 an hour. Meanwhile, minimum wage to flip burgers or basically do retail or work that requires very little physical effort, you can get your $14 an hour to do that. So there's a big disparity. There's a big problem I'm seeing already is where's the incentive for people to put in that extra work, that extra effort, and those longer hours, toiling, sweating, and bleeding under the harsh sun and elements that we have to deal with when you work outside in the construction industries. Where's the incentive for people to want to do so when they look and they can just go to any other job making roughly the same rate of pay and doing a whole lot less work? Or just sit at home and live off mom and dad. That's another thing. You call these young people stupid or lazy, but in reality, they're neither stupid or lazy. They just recognize the reality of not being properly rewarded for the kind of work and effort that's involved in these particular occupations. This is a special to Financial Post by Ryan Mallow and Emily Hayes, October 11, 2018. In addition to being blamed for the demise of various industries, from diamonds to cereal, don't even get us started on avocado toast, young people are often featured in stories about our struggles in the job market. Over the past 2 decades, there has been virtually no closing the gap between the youth unemployment rate and the general unemployment rate. Too often, our governments focus on the jobs of tomorrow when looking at the youth employment issue. From hackathons to superclusters, policy decisions are being driven by what do we need next instead of what do we need now. While youth struggle to find jobs, small businesses are currently going through a significant labor shortage across the country, with nearly 400,000 jobs left unfilled. It's no surprise that small business owners say this is the top reason they can't grow their business. Exactly. And yet here's think about what the federal government is trying to do, or some of these crony corporations. They're trying to use a stopgap measure, which is to bring in people from third world countries or emerging economy countries, which is just draining them of their human resources, right? So it's not actually a benefit for anyone around the world for these crony corporations or the federal government to be looking to fill these positions by outsiders, by immigrants. Because once again, you're just draining their resources in their particular country. No, what should be happening is proper incentives need to be acknowledged and used as a means to entice a very large and substantial portion of the population in Canada, especially as it pertains to youth, to actually jump into the workforce. No more of these band-aid solutions that are actually only creating even more problems and making the situation much worse than it has to be. A lot of you old baby boomers and a lot of those people who have been benefiting as a result of big government and central planning and having everything at their disposal and in their favor because of lobbying efforts for the last few decades. No, it's time to stop soaking up all of the wealth in this country. It's time to let the younger people have a chance, have a go at it in life. This is where the biggest divide I see. It's not like foreign actors or outside influence or even some of these newly landed immigrants that are the biggest threat to Canadians, although they are as well. That's a reality that can't be denied. But no, the biggest threat to the younger people in Canada, especially the millennials, are basically their boomer parents or grandparents. Because they're the people that, like I say, they are the ones that have been benefiting tremendously from the economic and social policies that have been implemented and ramped up in recent decades in this country. And they seem unwilling, especially those in the public sector, right? The parasitical types, the people that actually don't function in the private sector and don't understand proper economics because they've never had to function in an environment where you actually have to function under a profit motive, or whether the business can sink or swim depending on how much they actually profit or generate revenue. When you work in the public sector, it's just like having a never-ending credit card. You know, of course, that credit card's always paid for by the lowly tax serf, the working poor in this country, which, once again, is another reason why they just can't get a leg up. Your boomer parents and grandparents, and I'm not saying all of them because there's a substantial portion of them in the private sector that are suffering as well. But yeah, those are the boomer generation who comprise the ruling class. So whether it's in academia, politics, the public sector, health, education, I mean, you know, yeah, they soak up and sponge a lot of the productive wealth in this country forcefully, by that forced wealth redistribution model, I might add. Not that Canadians have chosen to voluntarily offer them and reward them at the heightened level that they now have achieved and attained. No, that once again, it's all done through force, aka government. So as you can see this chart with the skills job gap, 397,400 private sector jobs remained unfilled over 4 months due to a lack of skilled candidates. Meanwhile, unemployment among youth aged 15 to 14 is almost twice as high as the Canadian average. So as you can see in this chart, you know, there's obviously a disparity, but once again, it's all about incentives, folks. You got to give these young people an incentive, a reason to want to step up the plate and assume the tasks, the roles, and the responsibilities in these occupations. And you're definitely not helping matters by bringing in a huge amount, what is it? $1 million over the next 3 years and hundreds of thousands every year for the last few years. Yeah, you're not helping the domestic population or the young people in this country by bringing in these foreigners that are willing to work at much less wages than the young people in Canada. You're actually causing them more harm because you're forcing them to have to race down to compete with people that are come from countries that are used to much, much, much lower wages and compensation. The worry around labor shortages is particularly significant in the skilled trades. Our own data shows that half of construction businesses are already concerned about the availability of labor. On top of an already bad situation, the Canadian Construction Association is predicting that Canada is due to lose nearly 250,000 construction workers in the next decade due to retirement. The workforce coming up to replace them is less than half that number. Governments at every level have made significant political hay of the country's crumbling infrastructure and promised billions of dollars in upgrades for new housing projects and transit systems to bridge, road, and sewer repairs. So once again, it's just more talk about central planning and squandering more of the taxpayer money, but really what has to happen, like I said, these are very simple problems to solve, people, to be honest with you, okay? It's just all about incentives. Just like if you were a parent and you wanted your kid to have to go out and get a job, you know what has to happen. Stop handing them everything they want, right? You have to actually give them a real reason and incentive for them to go to work. And that's not going to happen if they can get whatever they want without having to actually delve into the workforce. And it's definitely not going to happen if you're not willing to reward and compensate them appropriately so that they can actually sustain themselves properly and get out of mom and dad's basement. Anyways, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. I don't want to keep it going too long, but yeah. This is a discussion. This is the kind of conversation that we should all be having. Why is it that these young people are unwilling to step up the plate and assume these tasks, these roles, these responsibilities? Well, there's lots of reasons. Some of them are pointed out here. I'm telling you a few, but some of the political hacks or big government lovers or those who want to protect their secured employment through government, yeah, they're going to give all kinds of different excuses and reasons why they don't need to necessarily concern themselves with the young people. And the biggest pushback you're going to see, or counter opinions that you're going to hear, are from those in the public sector, those who actually are representatives of government, of big government, because what they want is more and more tax slaves. They look at every person on the planet as a potential wage slave and a wage servant in this country. They don't care about whether they're born domestically or they come from some foreign country. They just look at them as an increase in GDP, or hopefully, or hey, even if they don't work, if you're in the public sector, actually having a substantial portion of the population, whether it's the domestic population or those coming to this country newly, as in immigrants or asylum seekers, that keeps these public sector employees, these bureaucrats, these pencil pushers, that's what keeps them in a job. So to them, as far as they're concerned, they don't really care whether they're the young people of Canada who are born and raised in this country or a newly landed immigrant. As long as their income is being plundered to sustain the public sector, or they're having to turn to the public sector for some kind of service or some measure or means or method to get a paycheck, once again, the public sector benefits at every junction and every transaction. That's just the reality, folks. That's the truth of the matter. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.